Oh my God. Hi.
Hi.
Oh my God. I'm so happy and excited that we're doing this. I feel like this kind of flowed very organically having
Very
Georgina on the podcast. But let's begin. What is your name? Who are you?
I'm Georgina. And gosh, where do I start? Who am I?
Oh, I guess I know it's always hard when I ask people that. I'm always like, who are you? But maybe just like kind of like 4 words to encompass.
That's even harder.
Okay.
No, I think like if it comes down to work-wise, like I'm a stylist by heart. Like I started out as a stylist in the industry, in the fashion and creative industry, which evolved into doing fashion design and photography and creative direction. And it just kept evolving into more and more of, I guess, depth into my career path, where I've ended up now with photographic and event spaces, which I've been doing since I came to Sydney. And we're now sitting here in my 5th one that's coming up.
In her new space, which I'm so excited to get into. But what were you like as a child?
As a child?
I'm very intrigued because I feel like we've known each other now maybe for about like 2-3 years.
Yeah.
But it's always like I feel like you meet so many people and then you have like these amazing conversations, but it's always kind of like in passing by, you know what I mean?
Very much so, yeah.
So I also don't even know a lot of the stuff about you, of like where you grew up, like who you were as a child. But
it's like we're going out to coffee right now for the first time.
Yeah, I'm like,
We've
let's
taken
get
a
into
step
it.
away from seeing each other at events and having coffee. As a child, I was an only child growing up. And then I ended up, my father remarried and I ended up with a step family, which are incredible. I've got step siblings that are 6 months younger than me, twins. So there's 3 of us.
Wow.
For 6 months of the year, we're all the same. We're all the same age. And then I have an older sister as well. But yeah, when I was real young, like I guess I've always been a creative at heart. Like, you know, if it wasn't playing out in my like secret garden, I was drawing and, you know, playing. And then it's like, you know, you'd evolve. And like when I had Lego, like I didn't just have Lego, I had the architecture Lego. So I had boxes and boxes and like, you know, the kitchen table would be covered with all these amazing architectural homes that were very art deco, which is quite funny in the alignment of, you know, what I do with my Prim Haus spaces.
Yeah.
But and then, you know, having a diverse family has been good because it's brought me, I guess, more to the table than just being an only child as well.
What was the turning point for you, like when you got into, say, high school and then you then were like forced to be like, oh, what do I actually want to do? And what were the conversations that you were having at home?
The conversations at home were more, you're in these schools. I went to a variation of schools. I got moved around a bit because of my mum moving as well. And it was more like you're put in these schools because the schools are meant to educate you. You know, that's the foundation that sort of came more from my home grounding. It's like we put you here and they're meant to get you there. And but it was interesting. I didn't feel that at all from school. I felt isolated in being seen. So it's like, you know, as being a creative as well. So it's like, you know, and the
because
things
other people weren't like in that kind of boat of wanting to do something creative.
I don't know. I feel like more so it's like, you know, it's kind of back to that sort of like teacher's pet thing. Like, you know, it's like they'd have their kids that, you know, they would always get the leads or they'd always get this or they'd always get that. And it's like, you know, if they came from this family, so they get there. And it was always very like ladder climbing, I felt like a little bit more in school. And it's like, but I didn't have that DNA of that hustle in me. I was a child. So, you know, I've never really been competitive or, you know, in that way, that alignment. So it's always like, oh, if I can't do that, I guess I'll go and try this. And it's like, but then you're not really harnessing on what organically is coming like authentically to you. And so then you're not experiencing, you know, that to a larger degree. So it's like when I look at it, like I was competitive in a way because we were taught about being competitive, from school sports to academic, where, you know, you're getting A's, B's, C's and so on. It's like there's always that competitive streak. But I think it's like when you were told you won't get anywhere by this, like you were taken off the track that you should have been on. So I feel like it really took me until my adolescence to really find that comfortability and exploring what I really wanted to do versus what I was told I should be doing. So yeah,
100%.
yeah.
When you think about confidence, when you say we're like a teenager, what was your relationship with that and like your identity, which I feel like is kind of a big question.
Yeah, I feel
But
like...
I'm intrigued in terms of like, I feel like knowing you for such a short amount of time, like 2-3 years, but every time that I speak with you, you have kind of like this effortlessness about you and you're always just so like present, you know, and it feels like it comes from this like place of confidence. So what was that like as a, you know, teenager?
I guess I was always the kid that was friends with everyone. So it's like I had such a diverse range of friends, which is definitely like come about the same as in my adult life. Like I have amazing friends, but they're scattered everywhere from my travels. So it's like, you know, I wouldn't say like I just have that one best friend that I've grown up with. It's like, you know, I've got best friends and incredible people in my life, but they're everywhere. So it's like, and it was kind of like that in school though as well. Like I was friends with the cool kids, but I was also friends with, you know, the science kids, and I was friends with the arty kids, and I was friends with that kid that never got spoken to because they were different. But I would always have these, I don't know, I've always had this softness about me. Like I'm really good with animals. I'm really good with children. And it's like, you're my baby. And, you know, that to me, I'm not trying to be that way. I've just always been. I think anyone that knows me quite well, I've always been that. So I guess maybe from the outside looking in, like if I'm out, you know, some people could look at it as like, you know, you're a social butterfly, or, you know, again, it could be perceived as confidence because you go into a room, but it's like, I don't go into a room per se and feel nervous or out of place. Like I could definitely go somewhere now and just walk in and, you know, either from my connections or just the industry, or, you know, like I've met someone online, maybe socially, like I haven't got that fear to go up to them and say hi. Like I recently did that at an event. There was someone that I've been following, and we've been following each other for a really long time, knew of each other in our workspace, but we hadn't connected. And it's like, oh, there's so-and-so. And in my head, I'm like, rather than just see them walk past, I'll run up and go and introduce myself and say hi. And I guess that does come from a place really of confidence. But
so you feel like you kind of, not necessarily always had that, but that was something that just kind of came naturally to you as a child?
I think so. And then it's like, I definitely think there were waves in my life where either maybe the people I was hanging out with, or the environments I was in, or where I was working, and, you know, different stagnant of people around me. Sometimes I can be a bit more insular and not necessarily be that way, but that might be because I'm going through something, or, you know, I'm in this situation, or something else is tainting me, so I'm not that free-spirited, happy self. But when I'm happy and I'm like really aligned to who I am, that's me. Like,
no, 100%.
You know, and it's like I'm very much in that space at the moment, and it's been really enjoyable because I'm like, oh, I feel like it's like that sense of home. It's like I'm here, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm like, and that's when all the doors sort of like start opening up more because I'm just being me.
Yeah,
and
100%. So what was kind of like the beginning of your journey getting into like actually working in the creative space, or what did you do like right after school?
Well, right after school, all I wanted to do was get away. Like I grew up, like my mum always, like when we were, because I'm from Adelaide, but I'd lived in Melbourne too. I went to school between Adelaide and Melbourne as well. And I just...
Isn't that so funny? I feel like, because I'm from Brisbane, and I think there's like a thing of like when you grow up in a semi like small town, although like Adelaide, Brisbane, it's not like small town, small
Smaller,
town, but
definitely
like,
smaller.
you know, but I feel like there's always this, at least for me, I felt that, where I was like, you know, even
you want more
in uni, I was like, okay, I want to travel here. I want to like, I just wanted to like get out.
Get out.
But now every time I go back home, I feel like I hold the place a bit more closer to me, and it feels like more nostalgic, you know?
Oh yeah, you start to see your home in a different light as you get older.
Light.
Yeah, you have different appreciation.
But
when you're a teenage girl and you just want to see the bigger world, and it's like, I think for me it was like, because I stopped going to school when I went back to school as well, so that wasn't easy. Like it was.
What do you mean you stopped?
Like
going?
I literally stopped. I stopped going to school. Like I guess you'd say like quit school, but like I stopped going to school, and then I met a boy who convinced me to go back to school. So I did that.
Yeah.
But you know, like I didn't have enough credentials to get back into the same year level. So that was another interesting thing too. So then I was also placed against 2 different age brackets and 2 different year levels. And like, you know, I went to 2 different schools twice. And I went to another school in Melbourne. So like my schooling, like I guess maybe that's also where those layers have come off, because I had to, you know, I'm constantly meeting new friends, constantly putting myself in different shoes, constantly, you know, having to, you know, be the new person too. So
why did you initially like stop going to school?
it was more the movement of my mum like moving around. So it was like, you know, we're living in Adelaide, then we were living in Melbourne, then we were living in Adelaide, and then it was like, you know, this back and forth. So that was the displacement more than anything. And it's like, because I went into boarding school for a little bit as well. And it's like, you know, I was an only child growing up. So boarding school was really out of body for me. Like I only knew my life with my mum, not with other kids. And, you know, it was like being on school camp nonstop. So it was very out of body for me. And it didn't feel, you know, creature comfort. You know, I was like the introvert in me, even though I can be an extrovert too, like found that quite displacing. So but I'm glad, like I went back, I finished everything, but it was a challenge. Like it definitely was.
100%. How did you feel? Sorry, I'll go back to that other question, but moving around so much, what did home like mean to you when you were always in like different places and stuff and trying to find your way?
I think the one thing that I've grown to learn is home is here. So it's like, and the biggest grounding I've had in the last 10 years is Biggs, my dog, because I can't be as transient as I probably would be if I didn't have him. He's my grounding. But home I didn't necessarily have that placement of like, you know, even things, you know. So I've always been like that. I've always like had things, let go of things, move things, had this, had that. And it's like, you know, trying to create stability every time I try, it's not necessarily in my brain. So it's like I try. And then when I kind of let go of trying to be something I'm not meant to be, then it feels more organic too. So it's like, I feel like there's this, you know, perception if you've got stability in your life, you're going to be more in control. But it's like, that doesn't necessarily bring me the peace that I need either. I don't know if that's based from my upbringing too, but, you know, there's been times in my life where the movement has been hard, and there's other times where I'm like, this is exciting, you know, and if you lean into the positives of it, it becomes a lot easier. So, but yeah, I'm constantly moving. I think like I've lived in Sydney for 5 years and I've lived in over 10 places. So I think it's in my DNA to keep moving. And I'm just embracing it now rather than fighting it. Yeah. I think when I was younger, I fought it a lot because I was different, you know, so.
100%. And I think as well, when you're growing up, like especially in the media, there's kind of like this stereotype of how people should live their lives.
Yeah, definitely.
And when you're doing something like a bit different, but you don't have other people to kind of go off of, it can feel a bit like displacing.
Yeah, and I think I always had this, like I was always like I would jump, you know, I wasn't ever fearful of jumping. And, you know, going back to the thing you said after school, it's like I really just wanted to get out. So I remember I was looking in the Melbourne Age and all I wanted to do was leave Adelaide. And I was like, you know, looking in the job columns. This is like how you'd find jobs back then. They weren't online. There was no internet. It was literally the newspaper. And so you're looking in the paper and I saw nanny job UK, family apply. So next thing, I think like we did have some kind of email, but it was very very old school. And I think I wrote them and there was an email, something. I remember I wrote them a letter and I was like, yeah, I've nannied. I've babysat. I'd babysat once. like one family once, like it's like a couple of times, but like I hadn't, like it's not like I'd constantly done babysitting. I come from an an upbringing of being an only child, but then this like frill of this step family that was amazing. And then it's like I'm applying for this job, and then they're like, all they wanted was an Australian nanny, so they were like, yeah, cool, we're into this. Like, and I was like, they're like, when can you start? And I'm just sitting there going, what do you do as a nanny? I'm like, oh yeah, I can cook. I'm like, I can do this. And then, the letter got a bit deeper, and then it was next thing I'm getting told, and I did, I went forward with it and I ended up doing it, but I ended up moving to the UK. I just finished high school. I remember my girlfriends coming and saying, like my best friends from school coming and saying bye to me at the airport. And I remember there being tears and, the detachment of leaving that, and how it was really beautiful, I remember at the time. And then I remember my dad wrote me a letter that I read on the plane, and it said, I love you. And I remember breaking down reading that.
Stop.
And then, but I rocked up this girl straight out of high school that had this misplaced high school upbringing as well, bag packed, gone, bought this whole new wardrobe, going to live in the outback of not outback, but like the countryside of England. And I moved into this, picture perfect home, riverbed, swing in the tree, backyard, horses in the backyard, like beautiful country home, parents together, grandparents living in the backyard, 4 children. The oldest daughter was 12, and then there were twin siblings, little girls that were 11, and they were just like the epitome of English countryside, beautiful little girls. And then there was a 3-year-old boy, but the 3-year-old boy had leukemia, and that's why they needed me, because their mother obviously had to put time into her son, but she also needed to put time into her girls. Yeah. And so and they just loved Australians. So, here I am hearing these things. I'm like, yeah, I can do it. Sure. And mum's like, off you go to England. Sure. Yeah. You've got to, you're getting paycheck, whatever, like that'll be good for you. I was like, I was a deer in headlights. I had no idea that was coming for me. And that was the most grounding year, I think, of my entire life, was living with that family, because it taught me morals and values. It taught me family foundation. It taught me what it was like to really have family, like of a connected level around me, but was obviously displaced because it wasn't mine either. But just, I learned like only what you'd see in the movies that year. But it was also like you're there with a child that's sick and going through so much, and you're watching a child in pain, and you're watching a child having to go to hospital, and and that's where I learned even about like different mediums of healing as well, because they not only did Western medicine, but they also did kinesiology. So that opened me up to a whole nother world that I had no idea about, because I only knew about the GPs and normal doctors. So that also started that path then too, of like learning about there's more to your health. And he ended up in remission. It was the most beautiful year to spend with them, and but challenging in itself too, which is something that I don't ever really talk about. So most people don't know that that's happened in my life. So it's pretty wild. Like 19 years old, you go and look after a child with cancer, but also 4 siblings, like 4 kids you had, cooking, cleaning, helping every single day.
100%.
Fresh out of high school.
How do you think that impacted the way that you like looked at life after that year?
I definitely felt more mature. I remember but I was also a kid. So, I wrapped up with them, and I remember meeting some friends in London because London was only like an hour drive away from where I was living. So I'd go up to London on the weekends and hang out with friends on the weekends. And I had my cousin living up there. And then I started making more Aussie friends, that, the typical Aussie in London thing. And then I remember we're at this Sunday hangout thing one time, and these guys were talking about how they'd been to Eos in the Greek islands, and that you can go do seasons there. And I remember I wrapped up the nannying and I went back to Australia, but I still had a year of my visa left. So I went back, made money, and then jumped on a plane and went and did, the Greek island seasons and then went and did the kid thing, So then you're being a young 20-year-old and, I had my 21st in the Greek islands with, no one I knew longer than 2 weeks. And it was, some of those friends I still have as like really close friends now.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. I've always been
transient.
A go-getter and very transient. But that grounding of that time with that family, like it's here. It's like, if you need me to cook a roast dinner, I can. If you want me to bake, I can. Like there's all these skills that I learned within that year. It's like, and I think that's what I look forward to if, I do walk down that path of being a mother one day. I've got that. It's really something quite special. Are
you still in touch with that family?
I've got them on Facebook, so I see them growing up, but I tried to it was one of those things where I tried to stay in touch. Then it was like I was calling every Christmas. And then I remember one Christmas I called and the girls passed me around the phone and then Miley picked up and he's like, "Excuse me, Georgie, you're interrupting my Nintendo Wii game. I'm going to hang up now." And I was like, oof. I was like, so I'm like, I'll just keep you guys at an arm's reach, because it was like I was becoming the annoying nanny that just stayed in touch then. It's like, they're becoming teenagers. So, but I see them from a distance growing up. I see, when the mum posts, like they're not as frequent as what you and I do, but, you see pictures come up and it's there's a softness there. It's nice. Yeah.
And I feel like I even remember like not to this extent, but when I was, 19 and having these like particular experiences that in the moment you can feel that it's like something is special, but then after you kind of like, leave that experience, you're like, oh wow, that like actually impacted me profoundly.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it's not till like
I did not see that until later. Like it really I remember even when I came back, when I was living in Melbourne, one of my girlfriends was talking to me about morals and values. And I was like, I didn't really even understand to some extent having my own morals and values, not other people's morals and values. And that really got me thinking. And it's like, where do mine stem from? And definitely a lot come from that time with that family as much as my own family too. So, because they just live different life, different country, different foundations, different connectivity, different, different family DNA, so
100%.
Yeah.
Just before we were talking about, or you were saying that you feel like people obviously see you now as like, Georgina, Prim Haus.
Yeah.
But it's been kind of like a long way in the making and like so many different chapters and journeys. But what do you think was kind of like the beginning point for you to really like dive into your creative work and exploring yourself as like an artist?
I think after I did London, I remember I met a lady and I was doing fashion buying, and that's what brought me to wanting to do fashion styling. And it's like when I was after
I love that you say, you're like, yeah, I just met a lady and then I started doing fashion buying and then.
It's like I really start thinking, I got to think about my trajectory of where it all started. And it's like, but that started the real that. And then it was like,
where were you living at this point?
That was in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And then, because when I came back from overseas, Mum was in Melbourne. And then I think she moved back to Adelaide again. And I was working in retail, but it was really hard. I couldn't, all the management roles were filled. So being a casual employee at these beautiful boutiques and, but there was no challenge of getting higher, which I found hard. So then Mum and I decided to open a clothing store. So I had a clothing store at the age of 20.
What was it called?
It was called Eve Boutique.
Love.
Yeah. And I was the first stockist of American Apparel in Australia. I'd found American Apparel when I was in London and I wanted to bring it to Australia.
How did you even go about that? I feel like as a 19, 20-year-old to just be like.
I thought it was the coolest shop in the world. Like the other thing I did too, after I nannied, I remember seeing Urban Outfitters up on Kensington High Street, and it was this store you'd walk in and the first layer of the first level of the store was homewares and knickknacks and a bit of like fun women's fashion. Then you go up a mezzanine and it was like the cooler bespoke brands. And then you go up the top and it was like designer, high end, like, layered, brands and everything. And then you go down and there's a record store from the ground level down on a lower mezzanine, and then there was menswear in the basement. And I was like, growing up, one of my favorite movies was like Empire Records, and Reality Bites and those kind of movies. And so like I walked in there and I was like, this is like Empire Records with all these cool staff members and like kooky people. And there was like, I remember there was a whole lot of like, I ended up getting a job there. So, and that was before I went to Greece. So I worked there. And so when I came back to Australia, it's like, all I wanted to do was bring that DNA of what I found back home, because obviously having a visa, you can't just stay over there. So, that's the thing. I'd found American Apparel on Carnaby Street in London. And I thought it was the coolest store. And I remember coming home, 19, 20-year-old girl, and coming to my family and going, I found this like, basic store that sells this amazing clothing and I just want to bring it to Australia. And I remember my stepmother going, oh, basics will never work. Look at Bonds, it will never work. And it's like, now you're like,
You're like, I was onto now.
Yeah, I was definitely onto something.
Oh
then.
my God.
So
Yeah.
it's funny because it's like again you get these blockages just because you see something, but I didn't have money, I didn't have those things. So really, if you want to do something like that, it would come from coming to your parents and going, are you going to help me with this, or or finding that money. But I wanted to bring the rights to it to Australia, and then it was funny. A guy that was actually younger than me at the time got the rights to American Apparel in Australia. So, and then I had this beautiful journey with them. Like they started a factory in New Zealand, and then, I was the first store to stock it in Australia. And then it just, they ended up opening their shops and everything too. But yeah, there's all these weird little,
segues
moments and segments. And then, like I had them wanting me to be part of their buying team and all these kind of things. And it's just, all these opportunities, but, they'd come at you, but not always you jump, so because it would be like I'd be over here doing something else. But the clothing store with Mum was cool because it gave me more of a chance to explore my styling. So then I had photographers and magazines wanting to do articles and, editorials and asking me to come on board, and, it got me more recognition in my hometown, which was cool.
Was there any kind of social media like at that time, or was it purely just kind of word of mouth?
I had, what was the one before Facebook?
Was it like
MySpace?
MySpace,
yes. Because I remember I had my theme song. I had a theme song for my store, and it was like you'd have photos, like you'd have photos on there, which I think we were taken by like Handycam kind of camera.
Yeah,
and then it was the beginning of Facebook. Because I remember even when I was traveling in Greece when I was 21, like there was even something before MySpace that was
so like Bieber or
something like that. It started with a B or something.
Yeah,
and it was like ICQ was the chat thing as well. I don't know if you had that. You might be too young for ICQ. I remember I got asked out on a date on ICQ, and I also got dumped on ICQ from a boy in high school.
I'm dead.
I don't think it was very long lived.
So funny.
But yeah, it's like, and that's the thing. It's like to be in this like social media world now is quite surreal. And like, because these are all the days where you read like magazines and like, your icons, like, when I lived in London, and it's like you'd go to, the Notting Hill markets and Carnaby markets, and it's like you're going in Notting Hill markets and you're in the same stall as Sienna Miller, and you're seeing Kate Moss walk down the street, and you go out to Carnaby, and I remember I saw what's her name? Why have I got?
Are they in?
I've Amy Winehouse. So, and that's the thing. It was so attainable back then because, there was no social media. So everyone was real time and everyone's out and about and, very different. So
what do you think was kind of like culture wise, like the biggest difference between like our world now in terms of it being so like what someone is posting and like documented so heavily compared to like back then? It kind of feels like there would have been like an organic,
it's very organic. I've actually got the boxes here up in my storage, and it's like I've just got these boxes with like, I went to see Britney Spears live and got her autograph because I knew somebody who could get backstage. And, you know, like I've got concert tickets that I kept. And like, I just feel like I don't do that so much anymore because we take everything on our phones. So, you know, and then we lose things because we leave them on technology too. But back then it was really about, you know, collecting things. Like I've even got behind you in my office, I've got a glass bottle which has sand from Eos where I spent my summers in the Greek islands that I smuggled back into Australia in like in a bottle that I've got over there. And I've kept those things, but like I feel like I have more of those kind of memorable pieces from that time in my life versus the last sort of like 10, 15 years, if that makes sense.
100%. And I guess as well, like those were like your foundational moments compared to, do you ever get this? Like, obviously we have such like a privileged sort of like lifestyle in terms of like the things that we're like exposed to. But I think sometimes it can feel very like you do one thing and then it's like on to the next. Like you don't really have, or sometimes you don't really give yourself the moment to actually like savor, you know?
Oh, of course. And even like now with AI, it's like, you know, a few people I'm working with and they're like, you know, they'll take something I've written and throw it into AI and it will elaborate more. And I'm like, I don't come from that sort of grounding. I'm like, everything I write comes from my heart. It's like everything I do comes from my heart. So it's like to get a computer program to write something for me, it feels very out of body. Like it feels very detached. Like, because I'm like, everything I do comes from here. So it feels, even though it can help you, but I'm like, oh no, I can't use AI to write an email. I'm like, I'm happy with the spell check. That's about as far as I get.
Yeah, I also kind of get like that as well, even though I feel like it's just going to become even more a part
Totally.
of our lives.
Totally.
But then it's like finding
the happy medium between the both, I think, because there has been times where people have shown me things that AI can write. I'm like, oh, damn, that's good. Like I couldn't have thought of that. Like, you know, but other times it's like it hasn't got that rawness or realness that can come from connectivity. Like I feel like it misses that. It's like, you know, I don't know. It's like the difference between reading educational page versus something that's got more depth and soul to it. So
100%.
Yeah.
So when you reflect on like the journey, like obviously I don't think there's ever like a destination until like you die kind of thing, which that sounds really bleak, but because I feel like life is always, you know, you're always kind of like moving forward or moving towards anything. But at this point in time, when you look back on the journey of all these like different like people, even from like the bad experiences to like the good ones, like
they all equal
what does
up
it elicit?
but all of it, I would not change a beat in my story now. Like I've been through amazing times and I've gone through heartache, I've gone through loss, I've gone through, you know, like I've really lived my life to such a beautiful extent. And it's like, that's what they're saying, like good and bad. And it's like, I wouldn't change it because I'm really happy and content where I am now. And I don't think I'd be where I am now if I hadn't gone through all of those moments. So
I love that.
Yeah.
We were like talking before about like something else. And I feel like that's what I'm trying to learn at the moment, because I feel like, say like last year for me felt like really intense, like emotionally. And like say like a couple of years ago, like every time I feel like I've had this moment in my life where everything is kind of just like flipped and I've had like the biggest sort of change.
Yeah.
It's always come with like growing pain.
Totally.
And I'm trying to like learn how to, not necessarily that you're like enjoying the pain, but just being able to be like, it's all part of the journey. It's like I'm like nothing is ever lost.
And I think as well, we do get, especially when we're younger, we get influenced by our surroundings. So whether that be people, a place, a work environment, you know, what's on trend, like to what music is out, to like, you know, you really can go down so many different paths. And I think that, you know, sometimes I think I really do believe that our story is written for us. So it's like, you know, coming back.
You believe in destiny?
Yeah, in a way, because like even for me being a 40-year-old woman and, you know, I haven't got the foundation of, you know, family and the extent of my own children, it's like if I'm meant to be a mum, I really feel like that's written in my story. And rather than putting pressure into that situation, I just feel like it's going to happen if it's meant to be. And so that's really helped me to process where I'm at my age without society pressure, without feeling like I'm missing out or feeling like my timing's wrong or anything like this. And it's really brought me to a present moment where I'm like, you know, like I was telling you some stuff that's come up recently, and it's like you just kind of go, you just have those aha moments where you're like, I just need to be more grateful and present with what's happening and be in the moment versus worrying about the future or worrying about what's happened in the past. Because like I've got peace with the past now, like, you know, and by having peace with what's happened or having peace with certain people and situations, it's not necessarily about them, it's about the peace that I bring to the situation. So I'm like, if I go, like I was telling you, there's certain people that have come into my life and, you know, from behaviors to exits to, you know, some people come in waves and they come back, or, you know, as someone did, I think it was actually my cousin. We're really great mates. He came up, we actually hung out last night, and he doesn't live here, but he comes, you know, visit sometimes. And he told me this theory last year, and I really feel like that grounded me. But he goes, you know, life's like a train. And it's like sometimes, you know, you're on that train and you're going along and, you know, you might be sitting with someone for a fair amount of that ride. And then one day they might just jump off, you know, and then, but they might come back on again at another stop, you know, but sometimes they might go off and that's it, you know, and, you know, sometimes that train will go fast, sometimes it will go slow. And it's like, if you can kind of look at your life like that as well, it's like, I think people come into your life for a reason and they leave your life for a reason. There's learnings, there's so much surrounding that. And it's like, rather than, I feel like when I was younger, I would be more emotionally disrupted if something changed. Whereas now, if it's not meant to be here, I've got understanding that it, like, let it go, like, more. Like, it's kind of like the let them theory in a way too. It's like, just, you know, if that's not meant to, don't force something. Because when you force something, it doesn't necessarily, you're forcing, like I'm saying, like the story being written and things like that. It's like, if you're forcing something that isn't meant to be there, that magnetic connection isn't going to happen. It's going to actually cause more chaos. So it's like, I don't know, just there's a lot more calmness in my life since sort of understanding those kind of theories and getting that sort of, you know, advice, I guess, or, you know, reaching out to new people, like, because, you know, maybe some friends have let go, but you've got more space for family in that capacity, finding people you can trust, finding people who are grounding, like, but then also finding what, like, then coming back to you and really figuring out, why does that make me feel like that too? And understanding the why.
Yeah.
The why is
like,
really,
why am I being triggered?
Yeah.
No, I love that so much. Just touching base on, I find it really interesting. I saw you, I think it was last year Fashion Week, and there was a moment where you were like saying, like, as, you know, who you are, that you kind of like experimental with like what you wear.
Yeah.
And at the time that you like walked in a show and they kind of put you in like a stereotypical like thing that might potentially be for like your age demographic.
Yeah.
How do you find that in terms of working in the fashion and beauty space and being a woman and the pressures that comes with growing older?
Yeah, I feel like I'm in a really interesting space because I feel like age positivity is definitely still got a long way to go. But the thing is, like, I think because of my I guess, like, I am quite youthful in my demeanor. Like, I live my life on the edge. I'm very much like here, there, everywhere. I travel, I do all these things, and it brings me, like, I'm not grounded with kids. Like, I've got a dog, but, you know, I've got support with him and a network with him where if I need to, I can leave. Whereas like with kids, it's a lot harder. So when it comes to age, I just, like, I'm getting casted mother roles.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I remember you doing a post, I think last year, or I can't quite remember, about your autoimmune disease and how, you know, that all just like happened like out of the blue. But
well, it happened and I was very silent about it.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I had a place in
What
society
year
to
was
talk
it?
about it. It was towards the end of COVID. So it was almost 3
2022?
years ago
Yeah.
now. I wasn't well. Because when COVID came and, the whole getting vaccines, I was actually flagged to not get a vaccine because of my issues, but then I needed to travel for work. And then, I saw all these people getting vaccines and they were fine. And so I was like, oh, I'll go get my vaccine. I got so sick from getting the vaccine. And it was like a snowball effect. It was the vaccine. I also, my ex-partner and I got engaged, and I definitely don't think that was the path I was meant to be on. And my body showed up for me over my mind. So, I had all these autoimmune issues flare up. I had a SIBO with my gut stuff. I had a skin condition where I had like urticaria and angioedema, which I wrote about in more context on a post on my socials. But, and it was just in and out of hospital for months. And I was really quite violently sick. And my support network, which I thought I had at the time, weren't there for me. They were in ways, but not in the ways that I needed them. And, my life literally, I lost some very important people to me in that time. And it was an eye-opener as well. And, it's like I was talking with someone recently who just had a heart attack as well. And how that sort of made them wake up. And it's like, yeah, it was like when my nervous system crashed, I had that wake up too. And it's just, I take life and I take the approach of it very differently now. And it's like, it's the art of play. It's like, I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to I do take things seriously. I take things very seriously, but at the same time, I want to enjoy myself. We're here, why wouldn't I? It's like, that's why I've got this amazing place. I get to be here every day because it's like I work hard to get here, but I want to create this world that I want because that's what brings me my happiness, So
What made you feel like going through, that and being in and out of hospital? What made you then feel comfortable to be able to share? Because I feel like a lot of people, suffer from different things, but you kind of suffer in silence. And also, was there an aspect of working within the beauty and fashion space that influenced you kind of not wanting to not that you had to tell people, but you know what I mean, but being open about it?
Yeah, it took me a year. It took me because I actually then had to start healing as well afterwards. So I was working with the right kind of healer, dietitian kind of people as well. Yeah. But it was more the acceptance that I was sick. I think that takes time as well to process when something is happening to you. Some people might be better at gravitating to it and working with it, but it's not just about dealing with the sickness. It's a financial strain too.
Yeah.
You can't work it the way that you need to work, but you've also got to have the money to support the health industry and getting fixed. Because, if you're looking for, for instance, I went to doctors and I got put on all this medication, but the medication ended up making me sicker because, the doctors weren't following through with sharing with me how to come off it. It was like, take this because it will make you better, but not understanding that if you don't do it the proper way, you can actually get more sick. And so you learn these things while you're going through it, which is a very vicious cycle because you're constantly just throwing down money trying to learn. It's and it is a very expensive process. And when that money isn't accessible as well, or you've exhausted your income, it's a really vulnerable place to be in. So, because then all of a sudden, if you do start telling people are like, well, you should try this or you should try that. And it's like, but I don't even have the resources to be able to go and do that, or the time management either, because you still need to work to make a living, or you need to do these things. So yeah, it was a very interesting journey, and, I still deal with it on a day-to-day basis, but I've learned how to manage it now. So, and I think honestly, the biggest thing in life is sleep. Is if you sleep and you sleep well, everything works so much better. Yeah. From your health to your mind to your metabolism to everything. And sometimes I went into an apartment block at one point, And I didn't realize how much outside noise there was. And I didn't sleep that year that I was living there, and how detrimental that was to all the work that I'd done. It actually threw me on a back end I had to, fight again to get there. But you can't sometimes, again, you can't break a lease. It's expensive. I just moved. It cost me a couple of grand in, removal fees. It's like, you can't just keep moving because something doesn't work either. Sometimes when you make a commitment to something, you have to also outlive that too. So you're then having to, work around time and working around patience. And, that probably has also brought me a lot more calmness too, because I've had to, not everything is solutionized quickly. And sometimes that's what I'm saying. It's not just what your one thing you're dealing with, it's your surroundings. And then that goes into that's your lifestyle. And then it goes into the people. And then it's, it's very multifaceted. So, yeah.
How do you think, obviously it's still something that you have to think about on like a day-to-day basis, but going through a year like that like shifted everything in your life, how has it impacted the person that you are now?
I think now it's more that it's just a way of being. Like I saw a younger girl that I knew recently post on socials. She's obviously been going through something. I'm not sure what it was. And she put out a post. She was very vulnerable and goes, I haven't shared, but I haven't been well. And like, I wanted to share this with my community to see if there was anyone else out there. And it was not even like, I think I was busy at the time, but it was not even it was a no-brainer. I wrote back and I just said, just have patience in your journey, trust in the process, trust in the healing. And like, you can, like, good things come from time. And like, I think I wrote something and she goes, this is exactly why I wrote this today, so that people like you would reach out to me. And it's like, and I just said, look, if you need to, come and have a coffee. It's like, I'm not going to force someone to come and have a chat, but it's like, I could talk about this stuff for hours, but then that's also brought me a nicer community too, because there are people that have either, seen my post and listened, or, reacted and either, I've had friends even apologize, go, I'm so sorry that I had no idea you were going through that. But it's like, it's not that I couldn't go to them, but I actually felt so isolated going through it at the time, because I didn't feel like I knew anyone that I could relate to, because I didn't know anyone else who was going through. It wasn't just this or just that. It was like my whole nervous system broke down. Like, I had hives all over me. Like stomach, I was like 6 months pregnant every day, constantly sick. It's like, but there's no baby, you're not pregnant. It's your body, dealing with inflammation and dealing with sickness and all these things. So you're having to build, it's like everything's crashed and you're just having to build your battery back up again. So, and that's the thing. I think that's like even like the chat I had with my mom, and I'm like, when did your battery start exhausting? Because mine's exhausting. And it's like, but it's not in a bad way. I live a very full life and I have a lot of fun. I'm like, but that's what I'm saying. If I threw in alcohol into the mix or something, I just don't think I could go at the frequency I do. So that's why I choose this life of not having it. And I can have fun without it. I'm like, I don't need Dutch courage to go out and have a chat or be around a table with a group of friends. But it does isolate you from certain friendship groups sometimes too. So, yeah.
100%. I also was going to say only if you feel comfortable with this, but going through all of that, were they actually able to find out like what was happening with you? Like in terms of like getting a diagnosis?
Yeah, yes and no. So I had SIBO, which is leaky gut, which is, it could have come from anywhere. It could have been like my time that I spent in Bali because of the foods I was eating. It could have been picking up a parasite. I definitely had parasites from living there because I didn't know how to manage and look after it. You'd have friends giving you advice here and there, but, it's like anything. It's like, who do you really trust in the advice you're being given? And, I was constantly sick sometimes there when I was living there too. So, you don't know where it actually came from. But, I got the diagnoses of what they found. And then it was more so working out how to live with that. You know, and knowing that, the urticaria and angioedema, I think that's how you say it, like I remember even being at the doctors and they're like, you probably will have flare-ups for the next year. So, you know, then having to go home and explain that to your fiance and going, I don't know if I can get married in the time frame that you want to get married in, because I don't know if I'm going to be at the altar of whatever that looks like for us, and not going to be able to be okay, know that I'm going to be okay, and having to pull the reins. And for them not to, you know, that was really the divider line for us, because it was like, I'm coming from a place of like guidance and concern, whereas he's hearing it as maybe as rejection, or, you know, not wanting the same things. And it definitely didn't come from that place. I would have gone and married him, you know, down at the, you know, registry tomorrow kind of thing. Like that's, but it was more that like, I don't know if I can travel overseas, and I don't know if I can, you know, weddings are stressful. You know, what if I flare up in hives, like as I'm about to get, I don't want that, you know. I'm like, I want to be able to be in the moment with you. And that back then was the choice of not drinking was because of my health, not because of, I didn't want to. So, you know, in your head, you're like, well, you know, I want to get married. I might want to have a glass of champagne, or, you know, these, you know, there's so many different facets that you're thinking through. And it's like, you know, but right now the number one thing has got to be my health. So, you know, and that's when you start to feel more alone, because you're like, no one really is showing up for me except myself. So that's where you have to really go, okay, you know, how do I feel about myself? Do I love myself enough to do these choices?
Yeah, that inner work.
Yeah. And I really had to start doing that inner work. I didn't realize how much, you know, I hadn't worked through, and how much I had to work through. And then that's where that path really opened up for me, came from that space of being so sick and, you know, realizing what noise I also had around me too. You know, who was I getting my advice from? Who was I going to as my safe spaces? Who was the ones that I was listening to? Who were the ones that were actually affecting my choices? And then realizing that my choices weren't necessarily mine, but they were a mixture of other people's most of the time, because of who I kept in that inner world, you know? And then really reflecting who are the people that are there for you, because, you know, there were definitely people that in like maybe like liked me in a place of vulnerability and being sick, because they had more control over that narrative of being, you know, sharing advice and wisdom and health of whatever they thought it was. But then taking a step back from that and realizing this is really nobody's choice except mine. And, you know, I think that's something that really has given me depth of growth in the last couple of years, is like, it's nobody else's choice but mine, you know, when it comes to my health, and when it comes to those, you know, how my mind operates and my heart operates, and my morals and my values and my purpose, and, you know, who I want to be. You know, I really got to figure that out for myself before I let anybody give any advice. So
I was going to ask you about intuition, because you're talking about when you've been stripped away of like, not everything, but you kind of were really like just stripped to really reflect on who you are and what your world is made up of, like your personal sort of world. What is your relationship now with like your intuition? Because I feel like I've been like recently, I feel like I've had moments where like I definitely rely a lot on like my support system, but then sometimes I feel like me trying to connect to that inner voice, sometimes I can find it hard to be like, is this my inner voice? Or am I just like listening to other people? Or potentially, if hypothetically everyone around me is like, don't do this, but then my inner voice is like, no, you know.
But it can even come from, what are we watching? What are we listening to? What are the lyrics in the songs? You know, it really is, what are we opening ourselves up to? It's like, you know, you could spend time with one person for a week or a different person for another week and walk out two different people, you know? So it's, I think with intuition, the one thing that's really, you know, it's, I don't know necessarily if it's been my time in Sydney, but there's been a lot of times when I've wanted something, I've made it happen. And that's whether you lean into manifestation or whether you're leaning into just really channeling things. I don't really like to pigeonhole it into one area, but, you know, like for instance, when I first wanted my first apartment here in Sydney, I was obsessed with 80s Art Deco bricks. All I wanted was an apartment with 80s Art Deco bricks. I started posting pictures of it on my socials as all I wanted. It was my keyword search. It was like everything. And I found a house with 2-story 80s Art Deco bricks, and I got that lease. And that was my first Prim House, you know? So it's just, you know, and then even with this one that I found now, I was so close to signing something so different on a lease. Yeah. I was like, it was very much a continuation of what I'd done previously. White walls. I was going to do the whole white and chrome thing. I was very immersed in that visualization because, again, what I was following, what I was integrated with, what I was inspired with, what was coming through my Pinterest boards, like, you know, creating this DNA and this feeling. And like, you know, it's wild if, you know, coming into this space, I think anyone that knew what I was channeling back then would be so wowed to walk in here and be like, what? Like, this is not what we thought, which is been the reaction because there's been a few brands that have come through and they're like, oh my God, wow. But like, totally get it, you know, because it's like I was so close to signing this lease, right? And to the point where the paperwork was done, everything was done. I was going to sign a 3-year lease. And I thought, I don't know how much the build's going to cost though. I was like, I'm going to do something smart here. I'm going to take a builder through. So the day that I took a builder through, just to get a quote, just a ballpark quote, and I took Biggie, my dog, with me, and we walked in and I got a really bad gut feeling. There was a different energy that came off the agent, whereas I actually put him in a good place the previous times when I'd met with him. This day there was something off. My stomach was off and Biggie was like going the whole time when we were in there. He doesn't do that anywhere. Like, look how calm he is. He's like, he was really frazzled by this space. And I just had this like aha moment. I was like, this isn't it. But the same week I was having dinner in Potts Point and I had a bit of an aha moment with this person I was having dinner with. And then as I was walking back, I walked past Stanley Street here.
Yeah.
And I looked up at this building and I said to myself, I saw the warehouse windows and I go, I like to say literally out loud on the street to myself. And I go, surely there's got to be spaces like that in Sydney. Kept walking home. Did my thing, went back on the search engine, and that next day, this space came available.
Stop.
Yeah. And it was commercial residential. It was in the price bracket I was looking at. It was very peculiar pictures because the way it was photographed was on a high flash where everything came up very orange. But I was like, there was something that was like, this is too good to be true. I was like, look at that kitchen. Look at those, like, you know, look at those features. I was like, there's something in that, but it does not hit the beat of what I'm looking at. But something's telling me to go look at that. Meanwhile, I had no idea that it was this space. And anyway, called up, agent calls me the next day back. And he was just like, I was like, it's like too good to be true, because I'd actually had a look at some other spaces where there wasn't legitimate agents involved. Like there was one lease I almost signed that wasn't done through an agency, and I think it was literally someone stealing money. Like it was like, I've seen it all. And I think there was a post I did put up on socials of all the spaces I was looking at. They were all white, they were all warehouse, they were like, you know, other residential commercial properties that I was looking at too, but like no kitchens, no bathrooms, expectation of like you as the leaser to like build these things from scratch, no help and support, like, you know, just money guzzling, you know, buildings. And anyway, so the agent was like, I'll show you through this Friday. I'm not going to put it up that it's a public viewing. I'm only going to do private because otherwise I'm going to have people lining up around the block. And I was like, sure, whatever. Got to the Friday morning and I just had this aha moment. I go, I feel like it's the same building that I looked at when I walked past the other day. This is like only 3 days, like not even 3 days later. And so I thought, I'll drive down and just check. I pulled up here and I drive down Riley, and I think there was someone standing outside 98 Riley, which is a gym across the road. And I reckon if they'd seen my face, it was just like my jaw literally dropped to the ground. And I was like, no way. I was like, can't be. That's wild. So I came back here at 3:00. I walked in. I was the only one here. It was just me and the agent, but he said someone else was coming. And this guy walks in with his coffee cup. Dude, I'm a girl, I got this. That's the attitude he had. So I start going, oh, shame it doesn't have a bathtub. Shame it doesn't have this, like trying to I'm not sure about this. Because the second I stepped foot in here, I had an aha moment. I was like, I don't know why, but I have to take this. Like I hadn't even walked around the corner yet. But it was like the second I walked in, I was like, oh my God, this is it. And anyway, I did not let that other guy have 1 minute with the agent without me there the whole time. I said to him, I was like, I actually questioned. I said, oh, what's your business that you want to put in here? You're talking about events. I said, I do events. Maybe we could help each other out. If you get the lease, maybe I could rent off you or vice versa. And I was like, what's your business called? He goes, oh, I don't know. And I was like, what? And anyway, and I was like, oh, you kind of put your foot in there. Anyway, I made sure I walked out the door with him and the agent, did not leave the agent's side until we were both walking away. And about 10 minutes later, I called the agent and I was like, I'm going to apply for this. I was like, I want it. I'm applying. And he goes, okay, cool. And I said, I'll get it to you by Monday. And he goes, no, go home and do it now. And he goes, get it to me and tomorrow morning I'll process it. So by Monday we're getting it over to the owner. And I said, okay. So I had all my paperwork because I obviously was trying to get a space for 5 months. I was looking. And so I remember I had to do a job or something. And then I went home. I filled out everything, got everything over the line. And then Monday comes along and I'm just sitting there with anticipation going, am I going to get this or am I not? And I remember it was about 4:00 in the afternoon and I messaged the agent and I was like, any chance that you've spoken to the owner? And then I get a YouTube link back and it was a song and I pressed play and the song was, I got a new apartment, baby. I got a new apartment. And it was like this grunge metal song. And I was just like, I remember standing in the house just screaming with Biggie going, oh my God, we've got the space.
So I always love to end the podcast with asking every guest the same set of questions, rapid fire,
okay.
But also you can answer it in your own time.
Okay.
But if you were at a dinner party and you could have 2 guests, who would they be?
Ooh.
Here in your beautiful space.
I would have to say Kate Moss and Johnny Depp.
Oh my God. I love that.
I don't know if that will work because they've been together in the past.
Well, I think they're on good terms, when he had his whole thing going on, she spoke in court for him.
But I'm obsessed with the two of them. I had a whole room of Kate Moss posters in one house I lived in that were those architectural prints and I had the whole room as a Kate Moss room. It was very cool. I had a party in there and had a neon light and it was mad. And then as far as Johnny Depp goes, I've had posters of Johnny Depp as well. Like they're both 2 and 2, par and par, and the iconic pictures of them together. I'm like, I'd be very happy with them around my dinner table.
Love. Yeah. If you could spread one message to the world, what would it be?
To enjoy your life. Just live in the moment. And word of advice, don't sweat the small stuff.
Okay. What would be, if you had one day to live, what would be your last meal?
12 dozen oysters.
Yum, 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 yum.
Yeah.
I love oysters. Especially when you go to events and like so many people don't like oysters and then I'm like more for me.
I am all into it. I love oysters. Yeah.
And what is the best piece of advice you feel like you've been given?
A girlfriend's mum once told me to always remember this too shall pass. And that has stayed with me forever. So, yeah, it's a good one.
That's a good one.
Yeah, really good one.
Oh, my God. Thank you so much for coming on. Oh, so much love for you. Bye.
Bye.